Hi, Mr. Ashish Kothari. Welcome to Sridhar Life School podcast. And for audience, I want you to understand that Mr. Ashish Kothari is a happiness author, and he has his website happiness.squad.com. Do check that out. And today we'll get into his insights from all his experiences about happiness and I think even success. So I'm very excited for this conversation. Really looking forward to it, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. And I guarantee you, we will come out with something super helpful, something applicable. Okay, so welcome, Mr. Ashish.
My pleasure, Sridhar. Nice to be here with you.
Yeah. So first of all, I really like the name happiness.squad.com. So it's like, I think what I'm assuming is you're trying to build a community for people who are learning. Is that tell me why that name?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, Sridhar. So the Happiness Squad, right? The mission of the company is to democratize happiness. It's to help make the art and the science of happiness accessible to everybody. So that we can make habits that actually help us be happier and healthier and have more love and meaning. And the idea is to do it in a community of learners, teachers, and practitioners. Because, happiness is not something that we can pursue. Happiness is something that ensues if we live a virtuous life, right? And so the notion of how can we show up every day? How can we practice a particular way of being? That results in us being happy.
Yeah,
that results in us being healthy.
So,
right?
Exactly. And I happen to be working on a video right now where I have gathered more than 80. Actually, I initially gathered more than 200 quotes just on happiness. And I tried to create a whole multidimensional view on happiness. And the one that you're talking about, I think this was a quote from Mahatma Gandhi also, that when you basically fulfill your values and when you live completely in touch with who you really are, then that's pretty much what happiness is. I may be paraphrasing him, but that's what kind of the summary of that was.
So I think there's these 9 practices that I write about in my book, right, that can allow people to be happy. But, if I break it down really simply, I think it's 3 or 4 things that really, if you're doing these, then it makes a big difference, right? Number 1 is, as you said, we are living a life that is meaningful. We are in the service of something bigger than ourselves. Second is we are actually at our best physically, mentally, spiritually. If you are struggling physically or mentally, it's very hard to be happy, right? That pain, that suffering kind of preoccupies our mind. Number 3 is we actually have a set of relationships that nourish us, that nurture us. If you're lonely, if you're alone, then you're very hard to be happy. And fourth is, you've learned a set of skills that allow you to actually experience more optimism and positivity. And when you are able to when you do face suffering, you can take an equanimous approach to it, right? You're not averse to it. You can accept it for what it is rather than mentally fight it. And at the same time, we generate a lot of positivity through how actions we take, kindness, gratitude, compassion. So if we do this work, right? So we're living a life that is meaningful. We are at our best, from a health point of view. We are supported by a rich community. And we are really living a life in complete surrender, experiencing a lot more positive emotions through our own actions and accepting the sufferings that come along the way. We will be happier, right? We will be healthier. And I want to talk about the word happier, not happy. Because it doesn't mean if you're happy, you don't have suffering. If we didn't have suffering, happiness would have no meaning. But this is about, regardless of what's happening externally, how can we truly be happier? How can we be healthier? How can we have more love?
A very important factor in mental peace is that instead of just thinking and thinking internally, you should be able to talk about your frustrations to someone. But sometimes your friends and family can get tired of listening or might not even understand you well. That's why you should talk to a therapist. Your emotions need regular air ventilation. Your thoughts need regular garbage disposal, like once every week with a trained therapist. At Sridhar Life School, we have a team of therapists that you can talk to. Please go to sridharlifeschool.com to book your sessions.
How can we truly be happier? How can we be healthier? How can we have more love and more meaning? Right? It's about actions we take.
Yeah. Even for happiness, again, I remember some quotes where people say, like, basically what they mean was that if you do not have unhappiness, how will you value happiness? What would you really know?
Exactly.
So I think it was from Osho as well. He was like, happiness is like the tree growing, and sadness or unhappiness is like the roots. And the bigger the tree, the bigger the roots. Though I have like a small breakdown of this. So I do believe, let's say that for us to really be value happiness, yes, if you have experienced unhappiness, you will value it more. But the question is, would we ever wish it upon someone? Let's say as an intervention, okay, now I'll give you suffering so that tomorrow you'll enjoy happiness more. We'll never do that, right? But we just know that because life will anyway throw enough pain and suffering at you. So you're like, okay, you take that well, and you don't, like, you experience it and realize, and then ultimately you'll value happiness so much more, right? So I think our effort should be
that is correct. I think it's about why you go through, right? I think what you're talking to is a bit around, there's two different aspects of it, right? I think there's an aspect, Sridhar, of when we experience suffering, it opens us up because we then also get in touch with other people suffering. We understand what it means. And so we can be more compassionate. We can have more empathy.
Okay. Very true.
And we can also hence appreciate the good life when it happens, when good things happen. So I think there's an element of that in what you're saying. But I think there is a second bigger element is, when we face suffering, the problem isn't the suffering itself, right? Let's say we have a mishap. Something happens. The mishap happens, but we continue to relive that over and over and over. So while somebody might have come and shouted at us and left, we will keep replaying our episode, and we kind of create our own psychological suffering multiple times over. And so part of it also is around, look, if you suffer, accept, if you are in pain, pain is physical. You can't do anything about it, right? But suffering is psychological. So pain, you can see it, you accept it, why it's happening, but it's all these questions of, mujhe kyun ho raha hai? Auron ko kyun nahi ho raha? Why did I get this? That's the piece that I think if we can dissolve and if we can let go, I think you create a greater possibility for growth.
So I think the term, this is actually a very important aspect of, in general, your negative emotions, which is what we call repeated negative overthinking. And isme, again, there are like two categories. One is rumination, which the one that you pointed out, ki past ki baaton ko like you relive. And then there is constant worry, which is usually about the future later, like what will happen. So rumination and worry is like, they can completely occupy you. They can disrupt your sleep, and you're not able to, like, even in the night you're sleeping, but you're actually thinking about all those things, right? And that can actually take over your life. Like if you're not able to.
It can. And for most people, that is the state in which they live, because our brains, if you look at it from a neuroscience point of view, we get wired that way, right? Wherever the water flows, that's where the grooves get deeper. Because we live in a state of high degree of anxiety, and we live in a state of high degree of resentment and kind of reliving, rumination as you call it, that's the pathways that are getting stronger. And so that's where the possibility exists that if we actually really integrate some of these practices I write about, we can develop new neural patterns. That's the reason behind the title of my book, Hardwired. Right? We can truly hardwire our brains for happiness. We can truly hardwire our brains away from, what I have found to be the neurological wiring which we have, especially in today's time area, is one for fear. There is so much happening outside, Sridhar, that worry us. Inflation, economy, political unrest, ecological disasters, the war. There is so many things around that really worry us.
Yeah, yeah.
And as a result, our brains like are not able to hold all that level of complexity, and we just are constantly, anxious. We're constantly worrying. We have short tempers, but that's who we become.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned actually a very interesting point, hardwiring, because what that tells us is that happiness ultimately, just like any other thing, is a skill, right? And the more you do
Yes,
it, the better you get at it. And I do this all the time where I equate it with going to the gym, right? If you go to the gym, you have to keep going. You have to keep working on your thoughts,
that's
keep working
right.
on your emotions. You can't just say, okay, right now life seems good. So yeah, it's just like you give it up. You stop thinking, you stop really resolving things and hope that my life is set. It just doesn't work that way, right? You have to
That's
keep
right.
you have to keep working on it. And yeah, I mean, even for the part where we talk about, like, there is so much happening in the world, right? Like, it could be like bigger events which could be like giving you a doomsday scenario of life, what's happening, life is unfair, and like, where am I living? Or it could be just very immediate things with your relationships, with your
Exactly.
but the thing is, ultimately, if the mind sees something as unfair, wrong, or scary, or just something, anything, it will lead to those negative emotions, and they will persist if you do not really have like a new separate narrative for them, right? Like, you have to be able to uh, have a better perspective, because that's what it really comes down to. Even in therapy, what is it like, what we do, CBT, right? Cognitive behavior therapy. What does it do? The core work is changing your cognition, changing your perspective, just getting to
Yeah.
better rational thoughts. And the good news is, once you address something, right? Like, once you, let's say, you have an irritant at home, or let's say your friend is somebody who's just always late, and that annoys you, right? Now, every time you meet that friend, you just, first few minutes, you're just always annoyed, right? And it
Well,
internally
you're
really,
probably already annoyed before you even show up because you're
yeah,
expecting him to be
yeah.
late.
You're just anticipating, walking towards him. Yeah, he's gonna be late. If he comes late, I'll really let him have, like, give him my peace of my mind, and like, so you're already thinking about how you're gonna deal with it. So,
Exactly.
and before even you started going out or started partying, you've already kind of ruined your mood for, I don't know, for 20-30 minutes, right? So this will keep happening all your life unless you just sit down once and really think about it. Okay, what am I really doing here? Like, is it that big of a deal? Should I react this way? Is this the best way to talk to my friend? And if you just resolve this once, the good news is, like, in 2-3 times you'll be able to do it much better, and for life, this wouldn't bother you again. So that's what happens with, like, irritants in life, right? You sit down, you resolve them
Exactly.
once, and then,
Exactly. And I'll tell you, right? I think, and we can even deepen the transformation even more, because I think cognitive behavioral therapy, right, works on one aspect of the unique individuals that we are, Sridhar, right?
yeah.
So that's thoughts. But there are two other elements that make the unique observer that we are, that shapes our world. Okay. So the second one is body. You would have experienced, if you're tired, hungry, haven't slept enough, when you run into obstacles, you feel very differently versus the other way. As a psychologist, you'll also know, right? Like, when sometimes somebody has a hard situation that they've gone through,
Yeah.
oftentimes those emotions can get stuck into our body. They don't pass through, they become kind of knots. It can really close us. And so all of a sudden, right, we don't start to see the possibilities that way.
So could
And
you
then the
explain
other
that
big
part?
piece is
Because
moods.
sometimes I don't want people to, like, take that literally. So when you say knots, like, what do you mean? Yeah.
I mean, so what happens is, there's a beautiful book which is called The Body Keeps Score, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's one
body
of
keeps
the
score.
one of
Yes,
the
yes.
oldest books around therapy and kind of what happens.
Yeah.
So what happens is, sometimes emotions. What are emotions? Emotions are nothing but energies in motion, right? It's an energy. But when we try and not let the energy, if we let the energy just pass, positive or negative, they can leave us. But when we fight the energy, either we numb it because we're like, I don't want to feel this emotion. I don't want to feel the anger. I can't explode. We push it down.
Yeah.
It can get, it can get stuck in the body, right? So it can literally result in us, our bodies actually holding that stress over and over, and it can literally make us rigid. and so there's a way of actually using our bodies and the intelligence of our bodies to create a different experience. Similarly, there is this whole domain of moods.
Yeah.
Right? This is all based on the work in ontological coaching. So moods, right, are, look, emotions versus moods, and I'll differentiate it for your listeners, right? Emotions are things that happen when you expect something and something else happens. So, you go to the exams, you thought the exam went well, you look at the grades and you got a D.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're like angry, upset, what happened? Right? That's an emotion. You go to the exam, you think you did okay, all of a sudden you got an A. You were expecting a B or a C and you got an A.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're excited, you feel top of the world, you feel joy, right? So those are things because you expected things to go one way and something else happened. So you can have positive or pleasant emotions or negative emotions. Moods tend to be different. Moods are longer term. And they don't necessarily need events to happen for you to be in that mood, right? So just like we can have moods, we use the word like, I feel this today. Moods can also have us. So there's a lot of times people will wake up. If you are anxious quite often, you can actually find yourself in a mood of anxiety. You can find yourself in a mood of resentment. The example you were giving of your friend is a great example. Abhi kuch hua nahi hai. We haven't even shown up. He hasn't shown up late. But we're already in a mood of resentment. Ki wo to aayega nahi. He's going to be late. I'm going to have to wait. Now it's a question of 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes. Right? So that's a mood. And so when you look at these three things together, moods, stories we tell ourselves, and how we are feeling in that moment, right? You probably won't mind him being 15 minutes late if it was, like in the early part of the morning, you had enough energy, there was stuff going on. If it is 9:30 at the night, you're tired, you want to go home, you're going there to meet him, and he doesn't show up, you're going to be much more upset.
So basically what you're saying is that because in a way, the mood ultimately becomes this larger version of an emotion only, where an emotion is just persistent and it just
over time, and it is stuck, right? And then those moods can also get solidified in our bodies.
Yeah.
And that's where, you run into issues. So the beauty of this is, Sridhar, look, we experience the world, right, as we are, not as the world is. Anais said that, right? Beautiful quote for your collection of quotes. So we see the world as we are. The we are, the unique observer. It's all these three things that play together. And that's where the beauty lies, right? So if, as you said, when we are experiencing something, if we can look at all these three things in play, we can choose to start to experience life differently by making a shift. We can reframe what we think about our friend. We can just be grateful that we actually are good friend. TK, he's late, but at least he's coming. Maybe he's got so much going on in his life that is causing him these issues, right? Second, mood. We can be excited. We can genuinely think about, excitement about seeing him versus, oh my God, this is something I have to do, right? And again, from a body point of view, when you're resentful, your arms are crossed, you're like closed, you're tight. We can truly breathe and be open and be excited, and we experience the whole thing differently. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this work in kind of creating happiness, which is rather than fight life, rather than fight things, right? Rather than be like ice, when we face obstacles, we shatter. How can we be more like water? How can we flow? How can we really surrender? How can we let go? Because us getting all worked up is not changing the outside world.
Exactly.
The only thing it is doing is screwing up with our own happiness.
Yeah. You can change your own thoughts, which will change your own emotions, and you can change your actions and decisions, which will change your external environment and your dealing with other people. Other than that, just thinking just internally, like that really won't amount to anything. And that's actually one of the...
Exactly. And this wisdom is there so long, right?
So long. Yeah. It's been there for thousands of years. That just, if you just change your thinking, I mean, Epictetus and those Stoics, like they died talking about it, which is just change your thinking. It's about your disposition. It's not about the circumstances.
Yeah, we
But then
can't control the external world, but we can master our inner
yeah,
worlds.
and the thing is, okay, even if you are, let's say, like genius worker, genius problem solver, and you are very ambitious, you will be able to master some of the settings around you, right? Like you will be able to bend the reality a little bit, but then infinite reality, like, but there'll be like 1% of the total reality, right? Then anything still can happen, which will just take you by surprise. I mean, forget everything. You think I've created this perfect life, but then you age, right? And then, oh, suddenly now I thought I was fit, and now I'm in my 40s or 50s, and now suddenly there are new ailments coming in. And like, okay, I thought it was in my control, but then it won't be, right? So there are so
Exactly.
many things which will, despite your best efforts, will remain out of your control in reality, that ultimately you'll have to have those gates and final control in your own mind, right? So yeah.
Exactly.
So in fact, now so now it's good time to actually delve deeper into your personal experiences, and that'll make it interesting, because I was checking your website, and there you have mentioned how in the past you have went through all kinds of negative experiences, how you were not happy at a time, you were stressful, and the work did not seem meaningful to you, right? So I want to know a bit about those. So first tell me about your happiness, right? What were the things that you were unhappy about? And I want you to tell me some insights that personally worked for you. Because, see, technically, what I believe is that almost all emotions or all thoughts that we feel, or like the way of looking at reality, are pretty much universal. However, depending on a person's personality and circumstances, some will be useful to others than more. So, for example, the set of thoughts that helped you, they are, I believe, would be universal in nature, but maybe slightly useful to some people than others. So now
Yeah. So look,
I want you to
for
tell me.
sure. Yeah. So listen, yeah, like, I mean, so like for my, I think my story is a very typical story for a lot of people who I would call insecure overachievers,
Okay.
right? The stereotype of people who spend their first half of their life chasing wealth, often at the expense of health, love, and meaning. And when I mean wealth, not just financial wealth, I'm using wealth as an acronym for work. Pour everything you've got into work. Everything else comes after, because you think, if I work, I get promoted, I get successful, I make more money, bigger house, I get married. Work and success is going to make me happy. The research from psychology is completely opposite. It is not success that makes you happy. It's happiness that makes you successful, right? It is like as clear as it can ever be. And I had a very similar story. I grew up in India. My parents were, middle-class family. My dad was in banking. My mom was a teacher. And they were like really, really academically successful. My mom was a PhD in mathematics. My father was like the topper in his class. And so education was really important, right? And education, not only important, but getting perfect scores. Right? Growing up in the 70s and 80s in India, right? Before India had opened up. The only way to kind of back then, right? The story was you're either Jay Shetty jokes about this, right? You're either an engineer or you're a doctor or you're a failure. And if it's an engineer, it needs to be IIT, nothing else. So, I went to IIT, Bombay. I graduated, did well, went into IBM, came to the US, got my MBA from University of Chicago. And I was very successful, very, very successful. And all the things, Sridhar, that you would expect in life, that to say, if you get all this, yeah, फिर क्या problem hai? I had all of those, all of them, everything, right? I was a partner at McKinsey, which is one of the leading consulting firms, highly reputed.
Yeah, of course.
I was happily married. I had a lovely son. We lived in a beautiful part of the world. I have tons of friends. My clients were happy. I loved my team, my company. My parents were fine. They were doing good. So like, what else you need? Like, aur kya chahiye? Like, everything is good, right? But I was waking up every morning with anxiety. I was waking up every morning feeling like I needed to throw up. And I think there were two things that were happening in parallel. Okay. There was nothing outside that was making me unhappy. There was nothing outside that was actually making me stressed. Nothing. It was all an internal game. One was, I used to travel a lot, but the work that I was doing specifically, right, the functional area I was focused on wasn't giving me a lot of joy. I didn't actually enjoy it. It was actually not even coherent with who I was. So I was helping my clients save a lot of money by negotiating with their suppliers better. I don't even negotiate a car when I buy a car. I'm like, I don't have that relationship with money. It's never mattered to me. And so when you're spending 50, 60 hours a week doing something that you don't really care about, you implicitly face tension, right? Because then you are just doing it for money. You're not doing it for anything else. And then the second is, my excesses of 20s and 30s, food, drink, late nights, client dinner here, client dinner there, are starting to catch up to me. I was like, my body had started to fail. I had gained a lot of weight. I was pre-diabetic, so it wasn't anything that was kind of crazy happening now. But I think there's a beautiful, American Indian Cherokee saying, right? Which is, if you listen to the whispers, you don't have to hear the screams. And I think that was basically internally, right? My heart, my soul saying, hey, you need to change. But I was stuck. I was stuck in a place of fear. I was like, if you change, I'm at the top. Like, oh my God, like, what will it mean? And by the way, I didn't even know change to what.
Yeah, of course. There's just signal going on inside you. Okay, oh, ting, 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 something has to happen. But then what? Right? Like you.
But what? Right? You change what I'm doing, but to what?
To what? Yeah.
Because, you need to know something. And that's when, what shifted for me, Sridhar, was, I went to a program. It was in an old monastery. And I actually found my reason, my meaning, my calling. I fundamentally believe all of us come to earth, are born with a particular purpose, with a particular meaning. Life prepares us in very unique ways based on what we love, what we are good at. There is a mission for us here.
And which monastery, by the way? Where did you go?
I went to a monastery in Portugal. It's like one of the oldest monasteries that existed there. It's part of the Ritz-Carlton now, so it's not a monastery. But there's a lot of spiritual energy still about the place, Thousands of years of prayers.
And how long did you stay there?
I was there for about 5 days.
5 days. Okay.
But even those 5 days, Sridhar, the fourth day, I woke up for the first time after 18 months with no anxiety.
Wow. And what do you think changed there? Like, what do you think? Why?
I think what changed was actually an opening, me realizing what I really was born on earth to do. Right. And for me, it was really all around really learning as much as I could about this whole art and science of human flourishing. Right. Really learning as much from completely different disciplines, psychology, neurosciences, spirituality, and really bringing it into the world, really bringing it to the business community, really bringing it to students. I realized that's what I was here for. And once you find that, all the fear goes away because you now know what you want to do. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the really important one because, there's a beautiful saying by this guy, Viktor Frankl, who you might know, right? He was a founder of logotherapy, Auschwitz survivor.
Yeah.
He said something in the 50s that is even more true today, Sridhar. He said, more people today have the means to live, but no meaning to live for. Right? I'll repeat that because it's such a beautiful quote.
Yeah.
More people today have the means to live, but no meaning to live for. They're just in this rat race, accumulating more day to day, wake up in the morning, run to work, come back tired, feed the kids, TV and repeat, relax. And they're just on this treadmill. And you ask them, what are you doing all this for? They don't know. They're so past the survival game, but they're stuck in survival.
Yeah.
And I think if people can truly tune in and they can find meaning in what they are doing, or they can listen to the meaning for they're here for, I think both of those are fine. I think we can fundamentally change how we experience life.
So now,
there's another saying by Nietzsche, which is another beautiful one, right? Which is those who have a why can survive anyhow.
Anyhow, yes.
Right?
That's also good.
That's a really important one because your life has suffering, but you need to know what's your why.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, that's kind of how our brains are built, that we just really really need to know why constantly. Like if you look at a child, like what is the child doing? Child is just asking her or his parents, why mom, why this, why that? Because our brain is
Exactly.
like just a meaning making machine. Like without meaning it just cannot operate, because it has to know that this is something important, valuable, before it even puts itself into action, right? So why would
Yeah.
you even get up in the morning and just walk out of your bed if you don't have a why? Like, okay, this day is for such and such. So that's why we really really need a decent picture, if not a perfect, a very clear decent picture of what the why for us is. And obviously it's not going to be same for everyone. We will all have to construct our own realities, because technically universe hasn't officially given us a why. We are still bumbling around. Okay, we don't know where the universe is expanding to. But yeah, in terms of our body and mind, in our biology, we can understand, okay, that what is like the range of human experience, and within that experience, what do I pick as something which is like meaningful to me? Like if, for example,
Exactly. And look, I think two parts. One, we can find meaning in life, right? We can't, there might not be meaning of life. We can
meaning
find
of life,
meaning in
yeah, yeah.
life.
And that differentiation is so important, right? We don't know the meaning of life, but we can find meaning in life. Yeah.
Meaning in life, right? That's point number one. And point number two is in this book, I actually highlight an approach which combines the Eastern Ikigai concept of, what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, willing to pay
Yeah,
for.
yeah, yeah.
That concept, I actually combine that with what I learned from a couple of guys who created this amazing course at Stanford Design School, Dave and Bill Burnett. Okay, and so you can actually start by looking at what you love, what you're good at, and then use that as a way to use this technique called mind mapping to come up with a range of possibilities around all the different things that you could do, and which you do that you will love, that leverage your strengths, and that actually earn you a living.
That
Because
really
if
is
you
the,
start to do that, then life is amazing, right?
yeah,
Because then
yeah,
you're looking forward to go to work because you're doing something you love.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, that right there is the essence of career counseling, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do. Because, and this is a question that I always recommend that people should spend a lot of time with, right? Even though the answer may change with time, because I also recognize that, let's say at the age of 30 you find something super meaningful, right? But yes, by the age of 40, like a decade later, your priorities may change, what you want may change, but that's fine.
Yes.
But at least you're in touch with that process. Okay, at least you're reflecting, and change is fine too. You don't have to
Yes.
be stuck with one thing for 50 years, but at least you're thinking, you're stopping. Okay, what I'm doing, is it the best use
And
of
that is
my,
at the heart of it, right?
yeah.
We have gotten ourselves so busy, Sridhar, that there is no time for introspection. There is no time to listen, to pause, and just be. And that is really, really important.
See, even with you, right? Like the initial times when you were working so hard, right? Like you were in a job, and very high paying job, and like a lucrative one, and you, like you said, you had everything. Yeah. So technically, let's say if you had to do all the things over again, I'm sure that you would still want to have enough money to have that independence and survival, right? Of course, so that you can be safe for yourself, your family, for medical needs. But then I think, again, this is what I'm assuming, and correct me, I think the difference, probably what you're mentioning, is that maybe you could have thought about your actual happiness sooner rather than waiting for that long. Is that one thing, or like how do you?
Yeah, and or put it another way, integrated what I love to do, created the space to say, what do I really love to do, and made the pivot earlier.
Made the
So,
pivot
for
earlier?
me, my
Yeah.
even last 5 years at McKinsey, while I was there, I loved it. I was very happy. I didn't leave because I was not happy and I found something else. There is a way. Look, I think this is the beauty of this, Sridhar, and I'll highlight this for your listeners. आजकल बहुत कुछ ये चल रहा है. मुझे काम पसंद नहीं आ रहा, मैं छोड़ दूंगा. Right? There's a lot of people who are quitting. I don't like this. I don't like this. So I had COVID. I was at home. I had this whole realization. I'm going to leave what I'm doing and I'm going to start afresh. And I say, listen, think about the Ikigai concept, right? What you love, what you're good at, what the world needs and is willing to pay for. अगर आपके पास job है, if you have a job, 3 out of the 4 things are already there, right?
Yeah,
Otherwise, you would have been fired.
yeah.
You're probably good at what you're doing, and you're working in a business that's paying you, which means people are willing to pay them. And obviously, people are paying them, that's making some difference in their lives. Right? So 3 out of the 4 are there. So just, isn't it easier to integrate the first what you love into what you're doing?
Yeah,
Or to change your job in a way that you can leverage more of your strengths?
yeah, exactly. I mean,
But wo pata karne ke liye, rather than complain, you have to tune inwards today. What is it? And then have the courage to have the conversation.
courage. That's a big one. Yeah. I mean, you have to be able to experiment, trial and error, and like go through a time of uncertainty. But again, it's like a short-term versus long-term thing, right? If you can bear that
Exactly.
uncertainty in the short run, in the long run, you'll really thank your past self. Okay, thank God I did that.
So I always tell people, like, try it at work. If it doesn't work, go do something else.
Yeah.
But a lot of people these days, they're like, no, I'm going to leave all this. I'm going to start. So, okay, so now you're starting from 0. Or maybe you're starting from 1. 1 is, I love this. I'm going to do what I love. Can you make money in it? Is there demand for it? Maybe it's going to also require all of these other aspects that you might not be good at. So we go from from one fire to another fire.
So now, as you live your life right now at this stage, what do you find meaning in? Like, what gives you meaning?
Yeah. So listen. I think I left the firm because I realized over the last 2 years, Sridhar, how much of a crisis we are in as a world, and how much of that is actually our own creation. Right. So this notion of this hardwired for fear, it's this fear-based mindset, because when you're afraid, what do you do, Sridhar? You first solve for yourself, right? Then you worry about others.
Yeah.
You lose the connection with the others. The second is you implicitly become closed. You're not open. When you're feeling good, you're open. You're generous. You're more forgiving. When you're in fear, you're closed because you're in survival mode.
In survival mode,
right?
Yes.
So you're there, right? And so I realized that it's this that's causing so many issues. And this is, this notion of stress, anxiety, burnout. In the US, it's like 40-60%. Globally, it's similar numbers.
Yeah.
Engagement in the US is 30. Outside, it's 20%. So these are really big issues, and they're like issues that everybody has, right? Like, it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. It doesn't matter whether you're a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, or you are a banker, accountant, consultant, lawyer, businessman. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And for me, Sridhar, hence I was like, this happiness should be it's a basic human right. We all want to be happy. We all want to have that in our life. We want to be satisfied. We want to be happier. And so for me, what gives me meaning is being able to build things. And that's what I'm building with Happiness Squad. Tools, trainings, etc., that truly allow anybody to be able to learn the tools and make habits that allow them to be happier, allow them to be more conscious, allow them to choose their actions rather than react, I think, habitually to what they have done.
This is very similar to my reasons. In fact, this is something that I initially got inspired by my dad. Like, he used to listen to Osho a lot. And so even as a teenager, I used to listen to Osho's cassettes, and even when I couldn't fall asleep, I would put Osho on, and his just voice was so soothing, and like a lot of stories also. But even though as of today, some of his ideology I still like, but some of it I disagree with also. But that's another story. But one of the logic of me actually turning into a profession was this only, that first, I'll be able to help myself. Like, if I'm into the research, I'm studying always, right? And then when I teach others, I teach myself simultaneously. I get even better.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, if I can earn money just teaching happiness, then my happiness is just a side effect of it. So I'm like,
Exactly.
so that's like an amazing profession to be in that sense. You get to be the best, get to be with the best ideas. That's what you do as part of your job, just gather the best ideas. And ultimately this mind, the happiness or your meaning or the experience of life comes down to your beliefs. So in that way, this job is such an amazing thing. Like if you can, somebody can turn this into like a real thing, a real job. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah, no, exactly. And Sridhar, and how do you do this, right? So I was looking at what you do, which is amazing. And my invitation to you, my dear friend, is to consider how you do it, where you actually can scale it. So, one of the issues right now is that most people have is most people don't have time.
yeah,
Second, most people don't even know that they are looking for this.
yeah.
So seeking is an issue,
Yeah.
right? There are no seekers, and then there is no time, right? So if you can make it in the work that you're doing where 5 minutes or less, you can help people form something. And also do it where they don't actually need you. They might need a digital platform you create or something like that. Then all of a sudden, you can actually get the prices down.
Yeah.
You can make the access be universal. And you can meet people where they are. मेरे पास 5 मिनट ही है बस दिन के. I don't have an hour to talk to you. How can I be happier in 5 minutes? You can be happy in 5 minutes. So I'll give you an example, right? I do this with my clients all the time because most of them are CEOs. They're in large business context, running around. I say, okay, try this thing. Take 5 times in the day. You can do 10, 12, 2, 4, 6, or whatever way you want. You decide. All I want you to do is at that time, just stop what you're doing, plant your feet, close your eyes, and take 6 deep breaths. ना कोई मंत्रा चाहिए, ना कोई music चाहिए, कुछ नहीं चाहिए. All I want you to do is just close, go in, and just take 6 deep breaths. Feel the breath go in, feel the breath go out, and just relax. 1 minute, 5 times. Most people who tried within a week, at the end of the week, they're like, oh my God, I have so much more energy. What did you do? I was like, I didn't do anything. The wisdom is in your body. You just allowed your parasympathetic system to catch up to your sympathetic system and just regulate you down.
Breathing
Right?
has amazing
Simple.
effects. Yeah, breathing, like deep breathing and mindful breathing, that actually has amazing effects, even for
Yeah, but that's
your
a minute
health,
a day.
sleep. Yeah.
Exactly. It's that simple, right? It's proven in all the research, right? If we just do this one practice, it'll take less than 5 minutes a day. Sit down every night and write down what you're grateful for.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite ones also. And in fact,
Right?
I like gratitude exercises so much that now I don't have to do it at the night. It's just become part of my thinking personality. Like in any
That
given
is the
situation,
beauty.
where I know, so this recent time, like I got annoyed at something, I remember. And like after 5 minutes, I realized, wait, like this is actually not that big of a deal. Then I intentionally in that moment, right there, stepped back and just started thinking about all the good things in that scenario. And within like 3 minutes, my whole experience mood changed and I just went on. I'm like, this is like a magic pill. Like,
Absolutely.
I mean,
and how many people
the
don't
moment
do it?
you are annoyed, just think about what the good. So even if a person is annoying you, just go back into the history and think about their good sides, what good they have done to you, right? And that'll give you like the larger context as opposed to just micro focus on that one annoying thing. It'll just completely change.
Exactly. And by the way, the reason it works is because neurologically, when we practice gratitude, our wiring in our brain changes. Our left to right activation in our brain, literally you can measure it in 8 weeks, changes. Right? So, there is actually neurological evidence behind the statement that is timeless, which is it's not the happy that are grateful. It's grateful that are happy.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. So they kind of go.
It is because our brains change.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of our brain also, right? Like technically all consciousness and all your thoughts, experiences, they are originating from this brain only. So the thing is, if you do one thing over and over and over, there is neuroplasticity. It will change, and it means
Exactly.
it'll just become easier with time. So the initial times when it doesn't come naturally to you, even the gratitude part, okay, that's not how I think. I like to think about what's right, what's wrong, what's fair, what's unfair, and I feel like thinking about the complaint so I can fix it, because your natural way of thinking is कि I want to fix this, or I want to make a complaint. So gratitude will not come naturally to you. But if you push yourself one or two times and you understand the basic logic behind it, then after 5 or 6 times, it'll just become like second nature to you. And how is that happening? Because your brain is literally
Exactly.
rewiring. So,
And I'll tell you, and the biggest thing is, you can actually start to see, there's this beautiful poem by Khalil Gibran on joy and suffering. Okay. But like the beauty is, we can actually be grateful. Oftentimes what's giving us grief, if that thing didn't exist, we would be even more grieving. So give you an example. Bachcha ghar aaya, bee aa gaya. You're upset. Your bee aa gaya. And you're like, kya gadha hai, padhta nahi hai, we've got all this going on, right? Can you imagine if that kid wasn't there? If something happened to him? There's a lot of parents who lose their kids.
yeah.
So even in that moment where something has happened that is not what you want,
और नहीं तो सिंपल सोच लो, बी का सी भी आ सकता था, डी भी आ सकता था, बी आया है ना
या सी भी आ सकता था, but like even the fact that anywhere,
the child
right? I
is
even
there.
tell people, जैसे suppose करो your foot is hurting, you can say, yaar, my foot is hurting. Boss, you have a foot, that's why it's hurting, right?
Yeah.
How many people don't have feet? So, I think in every moment, I think there is an opportunity to actually recognize that what we are suffering, we actually didn't even appreciate all the way while it was there.
Of course.
And while it was there, brought us so much joy.
So, so right now, as like in your current life, so tell me a bit about your family. So you are married, and how many children do you have?
I have one 12-year-old.
One 12-year-old. And so in school, I must be in 7th grade or something?
He's in 7th. Yeah.
7th grade. Okay. So, and how many people in your home total? Three of you then?
It's 3 of us. We have a dog. She's 13.
She's
Miss
13.
Puddles. She's old.
Okay.
And then my parents are in India. They're in Jaipur.
So you were born and brought up in Jaipur?
No, I was born in Bikaner, but I grew up in Delhi and Bombay.
Oh, Bikaner. I lived in Bikaner for a while,
and
actually.
then I went to school at IIT Bombay.
Okay. That's nice. Because Bikaner, मेरे relatives थे. I went there for a week, like, तो वहाँ का food was just the most amazing thing. And I remember उनकी shops में जाते थे. ये मैंने सिर्फ बीकानेर में देखा है. इतने छोटे कप्स होते थे वेयर फॉर चाय, लाइक इतने छोटे वो, और दिन में 8-10 कप पी रहे हैं वो चाय के. कोई भी आ रहा है, अच्छा इतना सा कप लेगा, मैं कहा ये इतना छोटा कप दुनिया में बनता है, आई हैड नो आइडिया. सो एंड ऑफ कोर्स जसूसर गेट के पास वो जो ऑल ऑफ जो वो मार्केट है, एंड लाइक दैट्स जस्ट अमेजिंग. सो now you're in Denver, right? Like which city?
I live in Boulder, Colorado.
Colorado, sorry, yeah, Boulder, Colorado. Okay, now you have a 12-year-old son, and so this is like the perfect time, or like the hot transition time for children, right? Where they were just kid and now they're turning into teenagers. So that's like the gateway. Yeah. So my personal expertise is something like it just happened to happen, even though I'm not a parent yet. But since last 3-4 years, I've counseled hundreds of parents and I studied parenting a lot, right? Because one of my parenting videos that went viral and parenting clients came to me. So I just studied that subject really well. So I want to understand from you 2 or 3, let's say, top insights for parenting. Like what have you figured out, or you're still figuring it out, you can still say. So tell me the things that you are still struggling with and things that you have figured out. Tell me both, actually.
Yeah, look, I think, I always say this, right? My son is my biggest teacher.
Yeah.
Because both in the way they experience life and also in the way that they they know exactly what you need to get risen, right? To get a rise out of you, for you to be upset.
Yeah.
So in that way, they're like, classic. If you think, don't take yourself too seriously, you think you're like really cool, you figured all these science and art of happiness and you can truly let go. They're like, here you go.
Here you go.
Try
Let me
this
give you
today.
another test. Yeah, let me
Give you another test, right? So it's a
Yeah.
constant testing process, right? So I think I actually, I love that. I love that framing, because earlier I used to get upset, like, come on, man, like, why, right? So I think that's something that I always struggle with.
Could you give us like an example of one like most common theme with your child where you like get into it with him, like any common
Well, I
theme?
think anything, yeah. Like, I mean, he's 12, right, Sridhar? So you know how kids are. 12 mein usko like padhai is like, life, he's got a pretty comfortable life. So I need to do bare minimum and it's good. Because I'm not like, who cares, right? Life is good. And obviously, we grow up in a particular way. We're like, why? I mean, and I don't care about grades between you and I. I used to care a lot about grades. I've given that up. But what I do care about, which I think it's an important life skill, is yaar, jo karna hai na, best karo. Uske baad jo hota hai, don't worry about it. But we should put in the best effort we can. Right? If a situation demands it, don't half-ass it. And so when that happens, that is what we struggle with the most. I'm like, you do what you want to do. Whatever you want, you do. I don't care. You want to be an artist, be an artist. You want to be a runner, be a runner. You want to do coding, do coding. You want to, I don't care. But whatever you do, and for how long you do, you don't have to do it for the rest of your life either. But when you do something, you do it with your utmost commitment and care. So we struggle with it, right? But at the same time, I'll tell you, kids are amazing, right? We think we're going to teach the kids, but kids teach us so much. You see, kids, Sridhar, are, kids don't need a lot to be unhappy. Kids are happy. Kids are mostly in flow. They're involved in whatever they're doing deeply. We adults need something to happen for us to be happy. Kids need something to happen to be unhappy. Somewhere along the way, we lose that. Right? So one of the things he's truly taught me and demonstrated, like, how can we be in flow? How can we really love what we're doing? How can we be in the moment? Constantly worrying about aage kya hoga, aage baad mein dekhenge yaar, who's seen tomorrow? So I think that's been a big learning for me, right? Is kind of really see him that way.
And what about any learning, let's say, dealing with him? So let's say when you have to influence your child, or let's say in way get to some agreement, or just sometimes managing their emotions or their demands or something, it could be anything. So as dealing with him, what have you learned, like this works better than something else, let's say?
Look, I think it goes back to the same concept of you control you don't control anybody else, especially not your child. Okay. And so if you have a disagreement, you know this. If I am upset, my body energies go to you. You sense I'm upset, you get upset. And it reverberates. If I get calm, mirror neurons, you start to get calm.
But what if they're making, let's say, a demand, let's say a big demand, which I have to have it. But even if you're calm, like child will still, because children can also be very selfish at times, right? They'll not understand the context and they'll be like.
So the question of, can we actually meet them where they are without the emotional drama? So they're having a drama doesn't mean we need to have a drama.
Yeah.
You can still say no. Say no firmly without all the,
aggression
why is he
or
doing
anger.
this way? Kyun kar raha hai? You shouldn't be behaving. You should be old enough. If you cut all that out.
And if you just go to the problem and you just state your position, then it's just better.
End of the story. And you can choose to disengage. You can even say, listen, I know you're really upset right now. I know this is what's happening. We can help them voice this notion of, you are not angry, you are feeling anger. I know you are feeling frustration.
Yeah.
that itself starts to shift them.
Exactly. That's actually a very good point, because if you're able to kind of describe them or just give name to their experience, like this is what you're going through and I understand it. However, the demand cannot be fulfilled, though. Like, it's much better than, let's say, blaming them for feeling angry. Like, why are you crying? Why are you angry? Why are you this? Like that's the worst thing. So
Exactly, right? So I think that's the power, because again, we don't control the outside world, but we can control our world. We can manage our world. And if we can get rid of the judgment, we can get rid of the, again, ye kyun ho raha hai, tum kyun kar rahe ho? It's all that story. If we can get rid of, and we can just be with, I think we can truly downregulate anybody by focusing on ourselves. So I think that's a pretty big one, when it comes to kind of hard things. And then I'll tell you the second thing. Kids do what they see you do, not what you tell them to do.
yeah, आप भी तो ऐसे कर
Right?
रहे हो. Like, I saw you do this, and sometimes they'll draw bad comparisons also, where it doesn't even match, but they'll see some match and where it doesn't even make sense, but they'll just copy you and find a justification for their behavior because I saw you do it.
Exactly. And I think the biggest gift that we can give our kids, we think we give the gift of the kids we can give is like, I'm going to make them work hard. And like, the biggest we can gift we can give our kids is the gift of attention.
For sure. It's
It
one of
doesn't
the
matter
most
how much. It doesn't matter how much. ये नहीं चाहिए 10 घंटे बच्चे को पकड़ के बैठे रहो. 10 minutes भी अगर truly you can be with them, where you're with them, or if they come to you, you make space for them.
Yeah, that's
That
truly,
leaves an impression.
that really is one of the most important things. I agree, because attention is kind of the currency of a relationship, which is like, without that, are you even like in a relationship with another person? Because if you can't even pay attention, so yeah, I completely agree. Attention is.
So I think if we do that, I think we are so far ahead. Right? I think we are so far ahead. So I think those are just things. But again, I'm saying all of those things. Do I do them 100% of the time? No. Do I do them 80% of the time? No. It's a 50-50 game. But, the other thing, again, kids look at what you do, not what they say. When I mess up, I'm the first one to go to him and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that is.
I said
crucial,
something. I shouldn't have said it. I got upset. I apologize.
Actually, this was a big problem in old school Indian parenting, where parents were always right because we are the authority, and you can do that when the child is 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. But the moment the child is developing a little bit of brain and a little bit of courage, then they may not say to your face, but they can see right through it. Like, what are you talking about? Your authority is not fooling anybody, right? So if you're thinking that I'm always right, it's just in your own head.
So then you give them also to say, hey, it's okay to mess up.
Exactly. And how will you
can
teach
apologize?
them? If you don't apologize, why will they apologize? Like, how will they learn to apologize?
Yeah. Then it becomes the ego thing. So I think these are the things, Sridhar, that have actually made a big difference in my relationship with my son, with my own, again. You go back to the only thing you can do is control yourself. Only thing you should be able to experience, we control we make our own experiences. I'd rather choose to experience joy.
Yeah.
I'm okay with accepting suffering when it comes from outside. I just don't want to create my own suffering. बाहर से आ रही है तो ठीक है यार, I don't control it. I can accept it. I can move. I can learn. अपनी क्यों suffering create करनी है?
All right, this brings us to because family ka baat hai, I have to talk about the marriage part too, because again, we do a lot of relationship things too. So let's talk about that. Like, now, how long have you been married? Like, how many years?
I have been married to Lizzie for 14 years. 2008 we got married.
And I'm assuming this was a love marriage, right? Or
it was a love marriage. She is English.
Okay.
I met her at Chicago. She was working at McKinsey.
So
Yeah.
yeah, because I don't think you would have asked her parents to agree to an arranged marriage. Like, so yeah, this was a love marriage. All right. So now tell us in your journey again, like if you look at the overall picture of a relationship, what it was, let's say 14 years ago when you first met her, or like, and so 14 years ago you got married. Before that, there must have been a relationship time, right?
I
Like
met her in 2006. So, I
16
met
years
her
total.
16 years ago.
Yeah.
6 months after I met her, I proposed to her. A year after that, we got married.
Okay. So see, in any relationship, that's what the usual pattern is. First few years, you have to sort out so many things, right? Like the amount of conflicts is higher in the first few years. Later on, the conflicts may go down, but sometimes interest also goes down. So that's another problem. However, every couple has this transition phase where they were like they go really hard on a few subjects, but then those things get sorted out. So tell me what were your key before and after with your relationship?
Yeah. So listen, I think this pattern depends. I think I don't know about I think I see more of a pattern, Sridhar, of when you fall in love and when you're together, everything is good. Everything about the other person is good. So less conflicts. As you get older, more conflicts because those things that never right. So look, I think for us, luckily, I'm blessed. That's not been my experience. In fact, I wish I wish I could. If you were a little fly, you would have heard. I told her yesterday. I said, I have to make a confession. She said, what? I said, I love you more today than I loved you when I first met you.
Oh, wow.
And I loved her a lot. Obviously, I got married to her. But, I think she is amazing. She is truly my soulmate. I think she's working with me on getting this business launched. And I think it goes back to, I think, Sridhar, I think what's made a difference in our lives is, again, as I've done this work, you become aware of all the things that somebody does. I have this practice I give my clients to do. Because as you said, oftentimes for people's relationships, taken for granted, the magic is out. Now they're just cohabitating. So I give them this exercise. I say, ek hafte na, roj, just write down what are the things you see your partner do. Just notice and write them down. For some people it might be, अरे कपड़े धुल गए, प्रेस भी हो गए. अरे खाना बन गया, घर भी साफ हो गया. अरे she went and worked and did this. You start to notice little things that we don't even notice. And you start to realize
how blessed you are.
Right?
Yeah, it comes back to that, like the same practice, right? Gratitude. Now you're just applying the same thing for the people in your life. Just see the good here. Like
and then also acknowledging, and again, same what we talked about with attention. How many people wake up? How many people wake up and they have nobody else, right? She's there. You acknowledge, you share, you truly give attention. You get closer together, right? So because look, I mean, the reality is fine. It's who's this? There was this joke, right? You said, find me a supermodel and find somebody who's unhappy with being with that supermodel. Right?
Yeah, I'll find it. Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because look, physical attraction, right, diminishes.
Yeah.
But I think the attraction we have because of really tuning into truly knowing the depths of the other person. Right? Truly loving, because loving.
So on an average day, how much do you talk? Like how much each day you talk to each other?
We talk a fair bit, yeah. We talk a fair bit, but it's not how much you talk. It is
so just to give it like a objective marker, like because this is again a big issue where couples don't even literally talk, right? Like even physically they're not there because work se aaya, came back from work and then just watch some TV and then message some friends and watch some memes and go back to bed, right? Like even that's happening in marriages. So like
so I'll tell you, if you ask my wife, she'll say we don't talk enough. But I think it's. But I think, I don't know, I don't count how much we talk. But I'll tell you this. Both for her and me, it is true. When the other person needs us, When they approach, when they talk, we are there fully. So that's what I say. It is not about the quantity, but it's about how you make the other person feel. Can you really be with them when they are suffering, when they are in grief?
At least
Can
you
you
have
really
this
be with
confidence
them?
in your side that, okay, I have somebody right there with me. Like, so even that
Yeah.
trust,
Can you
this confidence.
participate in their joy? Can you participate in their grief? Can you sense sadness and support them? Can you celebrate with them? That's what it's about.
And so now this is for the test of your self-reflection. And I want two separate answers. If I go to your son right now, and if I go to your wife right now, and if I ask them, what would you change about Ashish? What do you want to change about Ashish? What will they say? So tell me about your son. What will he say?
I think what my son will say is, my dad doesn't let me play games. He should let me play games.
This is the problem of the generation today, because
मेरे
gaming
को
is
games नहीं खेलने देते.
this
Too
is the
strict.
problem.
Okay?
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
I think that's what he would say. I think my wife would say something to the effect of, in fact, I'll tell you exactly what she's going to say. He's always addicted to his phone.
And maybe the son probably comes to you and says, Dad, you're also using phone, and I'm gonna
He doesn't have a phone. He's not getting a phone for a while. But
that's good.
But I think, that's it. Right? I think those are the two. I think that's I think that's the big pieces. But I'm really blessed to have them. I think they recognize. By the way, this is the other piece, right? Which is we were talking about doing. He sees what I'm doing. She sees what I'm doing. They know deeply in their heart this is about making a difference in the world. Because I could have kept doing what I was doing, had enough money, like not worry about it. But it's these actions. किसी को role model करना है, तो you be the role model.
Yeah.
Make the world a better place. Then then you don't need to tell the kid to say, hey, go figure out how to make the world a better place.
So your book was released when?
October 11th.
October 11th, it's released. Okay, so first, congratulations. That's again a big feat,
Thank you.
Of course, because I can understand how much it takes to actually write the whole thing and get it done, and then the marketing part. It just takes so much. So because I've thought about it, but never actually got myself to go through with it. Maybe now I'll actually ask you for some tips next time I am really serious about writing something. Maybe you can help me with that process. So tell me your, let's say, next plan for, let's say, next 6 months. What are you planning to do, and what are your goals with your work? Yeah.
So I think 2 or 3 things, Sridhar. I think one is I'm actually building a masterclass. So 6 months. First thing is we're launching a podcast end of December.
Oh, nice.
And it's going to be amazing. It's going to be on this topic of Hardwired for Happiness. And it's all going to be mix of expert conversations, how companies are actually including human flourishing and activities they do to do that, as well as some deeper conversation around the practices. Then the second thing that comes after that is we're actually launching a masterclass. So it's going to be around, as I was saying, I'm using the neuroscience of habit formation to create 36 micro practices, what I'm calling them. These are things that people can do in 5 minutes or less. It's like sowing the seeds so that people can choose the 6 to 9 that work for them. Form habits that you find valuable, that allow you to be happier, meet you where you are, fit with your lifestyle, high impact.
And this will be like an online course, or
it'll be an online course. Har hafte you learn a practice.
So it'll be self-paced, right?
Do it for 7 days. Do it for 7 days. उसके बाद अगर आपको फर्क पड़ रहा है, you feel better, keep doing it. नहीं फर्क पड़ रहा, छोड़ दो, अगली चीज सीखो. Right? So that way everybody can choose the ones that will help them the most.
And that's always true, right? वो diversity तो रहेगा ही, वो difference रहेगा ही. So
I'm going to launch that. And then that same program, the beauty is, because I swim in both worlds. I swim in the corporate world, and I've obviously done all of this leadership and individual work. This beauty of this program that I'm creating is we can do this with whole teams, with whole functions, with whole businesses. Because if you do it together, you create accountability, support, inspiration. You want to start working out, go with a buddy. If you want to do this work, do it at work. That's what we spend most of our waking hours on. Do it with your team. Integrate this into the way we work.
Yeah.
Much higher chance of success. So we're building that, and I'm going to be launching that out into the world.
Interesting.
Because that's how I fell into this notion of democratizing happiness.
This is, by the way, a very. This is the first time I'm hearing this phrasing, democratizing happiness, and I like it. Which is, you're ultimately making it for that individual, right? And I'm not sure your interpretation, but my interpretation is like, if you're giving them these options, like I'll cast my vote on like what gives me happiness, and I'll do that part.
Well,
right? Like,
one is that, and second is it make it accessible to people, right?
Yeah.
Everybody should be able to do it.
Yeah, everybody should be able to do it.
Not the elite. So even like pricing, I'm actually pricing it like it's like I'm pricing it where it's very hard for people to say no. So it's going to be $1 a day, which will be the equivalent right now is 80 rupees. एक दिन में 80 रुपए और 5 मिनट बस अगर वो पे कर सकते हो तो you can be happier, and अगर वो नहीं भी पे कर सकते हो तो I'm going to actually create 30% of the profits. I'm going to redirect it to make it available to people who can't even pay that.
Yeah, many people do that. These, like, you can call it a scholarship program, where it's like somebody applies, okay, I have financial issues, and yeah, so that's also nice.
But it is small enough, right? Where what is the price of happiness, right? It's priceless.
Priceless. All right. So I think this was like really nice, really insightful, and I got to know about your experiences, and I got to know about your work, and even in the initial part, you shared so many things. So anything else that, like, if I'm not asking anything else that's on your mind that you want to share?
Hey, yeah, I think that's it. I think, listen, I would encourage your listeners to go grab a copy of the book. It is available both soft copy, paperback, as well as a Kindle version, and on Apple Books. So get a copy of the book. I think what they'll find in the book is it's actually written from a very practical way.
I'll share the link in the description.
That people can start to apply right away. So I would do that. That's about it. Yeah.